I'm going to give you a fresh, commentary-driven YouTube script inspired by the Kiln theater show Manic Street Creature, centered on Maimun's performance. It's not a rewrite, it's a new voice, a creator thinking out loud, blending analysis, personal interpretation, and a few bold takes. Let's dive in. YouTube narration script. I want to start with a question that lingers after you leave the theater. What happens when a performance feels like a backstage pass to someone's own life, but then flips that intimacy into a communal, electric gig moment? That tension is what Memon leans into in Manic Street Creature at the Kiln Theater. Personally, I think this show nails the sweet spot between confession and performance, between warmth and edge. What makes this really interesting is how it treats storytelling as a live event, not a documentary, not a lecture, but a shared experience that pulses with the energy of a live band. From my perspective, the show isn't just recounting memory, it's staging memory as a living, evolving thing. The semi-autobiographical framing gives it gravity, but the real hook is how Memon channels that gravity into charismatic, on-screen-worthy presence that translates to a room full of people. One thing that immediately stands out is how the piece uses the Kiln space, intimate yet flexible, to shift between solo storytelling and collective, almost gig-like electricity. A detail I find fascinating is the sense of warmth radiating from Memon that invites trust, then flips into a playful, daring energy that propels the audience into the story rather than watching it from a distance. Let's break down the core ideas and what they imply for modern theater. Idea 1. The gig theater frame as a bridge between private memory and public performance. Commentary. I think the gig theater format is more than a gimmick here. It's a structural choice that makes memory feel immediate. When a performer treats a memory like a set list, varying pace, dynamics, crowd cues, the audience becomes co-performers in deciphering meaning. In my opinion, this approach turns personal recollection into a shared emotional arc rather than a one-sided confession. It matters because it reframes how we gauge authenticity, not by factual accuracy, but by the risk, energy, and responsiveness of the delivery. Interpretation. The show leverages the expectational trust we give to a live artist and then tests it. If the memory lands with a surprising turn or an unresolved note, the audience fills in the gaps. That active participation is the heartbeat of contemporary theater's best moments. What this implies, we're moving toward a model where intimacy is not a private space, but a social contract in performance. It mirrors how creators on platforms build rapport. Vulnerability paired with charisma invites the audience to invest emotionally and interpretive meaning. Why people misunderstand. Some may call it merely storytelling, but the rhythm, timing, and risk-taking are performative muscles, more akin to a live set than a straight memoir. Bigger trend. This sits with the rise of personal performance hybrids in theaters worldwide, where autobiographical material becomes a springboard for broader communal themes like identity, memory, and belonging. Idea 2. Maimun's warmth and charisma as a vehicle for trust and risk. Commentary. Personally, I think warmth is a superpower on stage. It lowers defenses, invites curiosity, and lets the audience lean into discomfort. What makes this really interesting is how charisma isn't just about charm. It's calibrated to hold space for both lighthearted moments and tougher truths. From my perspective, warmth is the glue that keeps the audience from turning away when the unflinching honesty arrives. Interpretation. The performance uses warmth as a technique, softening heavy material with humor, then pivoting to raw, vulnerable revelations. That contrast is precisely what sustains attention and makes the deeper moments land with impact. What it implies, charisma here is not a veneer, it's an instrument for ethical storytelling, guiding the audience through sensitive terrain without exploitation. It signals a new standard for autobiographical performance, where the performer remains in conversation with the audience rather than presenting a fixed martyrdom narrative. Why people misunderstand. Some viewers might assume warmth makes the piece less serious. In reality, it's the engine that powers momentum and emotional risk. Bigger trend. In theater criticism and performance theory, personality-driven storytelling is increasingly seen as a democratic tool, open, engaging, and shareable. helping audiences feel seen while pushing for broader conversations about representation and voice. Idea 3. The Kiln Theater's space shaping the show's tempo and intimacy. Commentary. What makes this really interesting is how a venue's architecture and stagecraft become a co-creator in the narrative. The Kiln's intimate footprint lets timing feel tactile, the hush before a revealing line, the sudden eruption of audience reaction. In my opinion, space can either magnify vulnerability or suppress it, and here it amplifies it. Interpretation. The design choices, lighting, sound, audience proximity, aren't background, they're active storytelling tools. They create a sense of being in a living room with a friend who's suddenly revealing something you didn't expect. What this implies, the piece demonstrates how venue selection matters just as much as script and performance. It raises a deeper question. Could similar stories gain even more edge if presented in a non-traditional or non-theater space? The answer might depend on how you leverage audience proximity and acoustic design. Why people misunderstand. Some might view space as neutral. It isn't. It's a narrative instrument that can tilt tone and interpretation in real time. Bigger trend. Across theater and live performance, producers and artists are experimenting with venue as a storytelling axis, using intimate rooms to heighten vulnerability and boldness in equal measure. Idea 4. The show as a reflection on memory, identity, and belonging. Commentary. From my vantage point, memory here isn't a static archive. It's a dynamic, sometimes unstable material that the performer reshapes in front of us. What makes this really compelling is how the audience witnesses memory being made, errors, revisions, and all rather than a polished souvenir. I think this highlights a bias in how we treat personal histories. We expect neat endings, but life rarely offers clean conclusions. Interpretation. The semi-autobiographical frame serves as a launchpad for broader conversations about who gets to tell their story and how those stories travel beyond the individual to collective experiences of community, diaspora, or identity. What it implies. The piece invites viewers to reconsider the politics of storytelling, whose voice is centered, who mediates the memory, and how performance can empower marginalized perspectives without compromising truthfulness. Why people misunderstand. Some may read autobiographical shows as mere narcissism or therapy on stage. It's not about the self. It's about the social power of shared narrative and the way memory morphs through performance. Bigger trend. There's a widening appetite for intimate, identity-forward performances that blend personal history with universal themes, recognition, resilience, and the search for belonging in a complex world. Deeper insight. What this really suggests is that performance can be a collective memory-making act, not just an individual confessional. When a performer transforms personal moments into a communal experience, they're shaping culture in real time. If you take a step back and think about it, this is how many contemporary cultural shifts happen. Someone shares a deeply personal insight, the audience tests it, reframes it, and a larger conversation emerges about public language, empathy, and shared humanity. A detail I find fascinating is the balance between vulnerability and agency. Memon doesn't crumble under memory's weight. She calibrates her vulnerability to invite engagement, debate, and even disagreement. That's a template for modern performance. Vulnerability as a design choice, not a weakness. What this means for future shows is clear. We're likely to see more performances that blend autobiographical material with live music, multi-sensory production, and audience-inclusive storytelling rituals. The goal isn't to reveal everything but to create a space where meaning is co-created on the fly. Closing thought. If you're watching this and thinking about your own stories, here's a thought to carry forward. Memory is a living thing when it hits a stage or a screen. The way we tell it shapes how others respond, and ultimately, how we see ourselves. So ask yourself, what would your own street creature moment look like on a stage? What would you risk to invite someone else into your world, and what would you gain by doing so? Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this creator's take, drop a comment with your interpretation of memory's power in live performance, or share a personal moment where storytelling changed how you saw something. Do you prefer intimate, confession-led theater, or do you want more high-energy spectacle? Let me know, and if you want more deep dives like this, Hit subscribe for more thoughtful breakdowns of how modern performances make meaning in real time.